back and welcome to a video where I recommend books with bisexual either protagonists or characters in them, because in honor of Bisexual Awareness Day at the end of September, I thought I would throw some recommendations together. For those of you who don't know what bisexuality might be, it is when people are attracted romantically or sexually to men, women, or people of other genders. And there is often bisexual erasure when someone might be bisexual and they date either a man or a woman. People might go, oh, they're straight now because they're a woman dating a man, or they're gay now because they're a woman dating a woman. Spoiler alert, they were always bisexual. So these are some books with some bisexual characters. Let's get started. I feel like I couldn't wear this jumper without saying Heartstopper first by Alice Oseman. This is a story about Nick and Charlie. Charlie is a boy at school who's outed as gay and he's heavily bullied at school. And one day Charlie and Nick meet because they are seated together in their form room. And from that initial meeting, they end up becoming friends. And Nick starts questioning his identity and realizes that he's forming a crush on Charlie. And it's just such a beautiful, wholesome story about found family in the dynamics of the queer friendship group, but also it investigates different family relationships and different tension points around mental health and coming out and the different pressures associated with knowing your identity and having labels and everything. So it's just a really soft, comforting and cozy story, and I would highly recommend it if you're looking for something that will kind of warm you up, like wrapping your hands around a mug of tea. It's just got that kind of vibe about it, which is really lovely. Then I've got an adult romance book, and people might be more aware of this now because it is a movie on Amazon, and that is Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. Casey McQuiston is non-binary, and they wrote a fantastic story about a romance between Alex and Henry. So Alex is the first son of the President of the United States. The President is his mum, and she's trying to run for a second term in the state's office. And then we've also got Henry, who is the Prince of the United Kingdom. So these characters meet at high-profile events and they end up keeping in touch and forming a budding romance, and it's just so beautiful. It also has a bunch of steamy scenes in here, so if you're looking for an adult queer romance, this is definitely a book that I would recommend to you. Also, the movie was really joyful, and it was just nice to watch a movie that has queer joy in it rather than being any form of tragedy, so I would recommend both the film and the book. Then we've got Wolfsong by TJ Klune, one of my favorites of the entire year. I only just recently read this and I'm like, where has this book been all my life? We follow Ox, who is our bisexual protagonist, and his romantic interest is Joe, and they obviously form the romance at the heart of this story, but there is a lot going on around them. So Ox, when he's quite young, has a father who is quite mentally, emotionally and potentially physically abusive. I don't know if he was abusive to Ox or Ox's mother. Either way, he's not a great person, and he abandons Ox very early on, and Ox gets almost adopted into the found family of the Bennett household, and the Bennetts live across the road. Joe is their son, and something about the Bennetts is not quite right, because if you couldn't guess by the title Wolfsong, they are werewolves, and Ox gets shown their lifestyle and there is magic in this town. So I love that it's a small town found family romance, and Ox's character development is just so heart-wrenching and beautiful. It's just such a good book, and all of the characters felt so dynamic and real to me. So this is just an amazing story, and I want more people to read it, so that's why I'm talking about it. Then we have another TJ Klune book called Under the Whispering Door, and the protagonist is named Wallace, and he is insanely unlikable, but that is how the book is designed. So I went into it going, I hate this guy, but then by the end I felt like a grudging understanding of him, and I respected his choices. So we follow Wallace. At the beginning of the book, he dies, and that is the whole premise. When Wallace has died, he comes back as a ghost. A reaper collects him and takes him to this halfway house, and this halfway house is a tea shop that is run by Hugo, and Hugo can see ghosts and he helps them transition to the other side where they can finally be at peace. And so Wallace interacts with Hugo, forms feelings for him, and starts to change as a character. So this could technically be called like a cozy fantasy because of the tea shop setting and the fact that there are a few core characters that are directly influencing Wallace. Wallace also is the bisexual character because he used to be married to a woman and now he's got feelings for Hugo. Then I've got another romance book, and instead of it being a male-male romance, it is a female-female romance, and that is Delilah Green Doesn't Care. And we've got our main character, Delilah, obviously. She is gay and she's coming back to the town that she grew up in. So again, a small town romance. And she runs into Claire, and Claire was her sister Astrid's best friend. And Astrid is getting married, which is the whole reason that Delilah has gone back, because Astrid's like, I need a photographer for my wedding, and all of the events leading up to my wedding that I have organized. And Delilah starts obviously falling for Claire after rekindling their relationship from when they were almost friends, back when Delilah still lived in this small town. So Claire is bisexual and she's also a single mum, and it's really lovely to see their relationship develop. And also there is the one bed trope in here. It's a steamy romance with the one bed trope with a group of found family friends again. Clearly I have a dynamic that I search for when I'm looking for books that I think I'm gonna love, because I adored this book and then I love the sequel just as much, which also has a bisexual protagonist. So this is a series that you probably want to get onto if you want more representation. And now I've got an adult fantasy recommendation, and that is Ruin of Kings by Jen Lyons. This is a series that just encourages queerness in general. It's like part of the world that's not really questioned at all, except for in the city of Kerr, where their culture is very predominantly male dominated. And so it's interesting to look at Kerr and then look at all of the other cities and compare their different cultures. And some of the characters question Kieran like, dude, that's dumb. So it's nice to have a main character called on things and also for him to realize things about himself too. Kieran is the protagonist, and obviously he has feelings for not just women but for men as well. And that is explored throughout the series, but it's very, very heavily foreshadowed. So it's not a surprise when things are discussed. It's like, oh yeah, I'm glad he's finally recognized it. So it's very clear to the reader. Then we've got another fantasy, although this one is more vampire focused than adult fantasy focused, although it's still set in a fantasy world where vampires are also involved. And that is Silver Under Nightfall by Rin Chapeko, which is one of my favorite books ever. And I have a separate review for this if you want to hear more dynamics about the plot. But ultimately, Remy, the protagonist in here, is a reaper, and he's killed vampires for a living since he was 16, and he's now in his early 20s. And he runs into these two noble court vampires, and for different plot reasons, they are forced to go on a quest together to find out some answers about some political intrigue and drama that is happening. And while they are on this quest, Remy starts to develop feelings for both of these characters. And this is probably the healthiest polyamorous romance I have ever read before, and I loved it. So it's female, male, male. It's so good, and I would highly recommend, because the steamy scenes, the banter, the plot development, the world building is all top tier, and I adore this book. Next up, I've got a sci-fi book, and that is An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. This one follows April, and she, at 3 o'clock in the morning, discovers this massive statue, and she makes a video about it with her friend, posts it online, and then it goes completely and utterly viral, and she becomes an international sensation just completely by accident. And this follows a lot of parasocial relationship dynamics and fame, and April is a character that can be unlikable, but you also understand all her choices. And she's in a relationship with Maya, who is a woman, but she also has had feelings for men before. So she's very clearly bisexual, and she's told at the beginning of the book as part of a media campaign to lie to everyone and say that she's gay. And that's the media basically trying to erase her as a bisexual person. So it's got an important discussion about sexuality in here, and it's also, again, got a great found family dynamic, also a potential end of the world scenario where society changes as we know it. So this was a fantastic one, and if you're not hugely into fantasy, at least this is rooted in our world. Another book still set in our world but drawing heavily on fantasy themes and magic and dark rituals is Ninth House. This follows Alex Stern, and she can see ghosts, which is why Yale have effectively headhunted her and said, come here with a scholarship so you can be part of the control factor for looking after our secret societies, because they all practice rituals and we need to make sure that they don't get out of hand. However, because there needs to be a plot in a book, obviously the rituals get out of hand and things go awry. But from discussing Alex's past, the more she starts sharing with you, you realize, oh, Alex is probably not straight. So I would categorize her as bisexual or pansexual, or at least loosely just queer or not straight, but it's not actually stated specifically in the book. So I can't say it's got the word on the page, but I'm fairly positive that Alex is bisexual. But then diving straight back into fantasy again, I've got Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is a fantasy book with multiple perspectives, but one of those perspectives is Zyala, and she is a pirate ship captain, and she is very clearly into both men and women, so she is bisexual. She has a budding romance with one of the male perspectives in this book, but she also has had a history of being with women as well. And then second to last, we have Payback's a Witch, and this one follows Emmy Harlow, and this centers a John Tucker Must Die vibe, because Emmy had her heart broken by this guy Garrett, and Garrett has also gone through a bunch of Emmy's friends and broken their hearts too, whether that be by misleading them or cheating on them. And she's like, let's get this girl trio together and show him how stupid he is. And it's also got a female-female romance. Two of the girls in the initial trio, so Emmy and Talia, are set up as romantic interests. And then lastly, we've got another adult romance, which I accidentally recently read, and it's supposed to be like a Christmas romance. So, oops, I read it out of season. It is Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochrane, and this protagonist is Demi, bisexual and very anxious. By Demi, I mean that she doesn't feel sexually attracted to people until she's formed an emotional bond with them. So she once met a woman on Christmas Eve, and they spent the entire day together and they built up this lovely rapport together. They had a one-night stand, and then both of them disappeared from each other's lives. Now fast forward to Christmas the following year, and they run into each other again, but they've only run into each other again after the main character has agreed to a fake marriage in order to gain some money. So you've got fake dating and found family and Christmas romance, and also, I mean, that forced proximity vibe because they're all going to the same household for Christmas and it's snowing. So this was quite a fun one, and it was very openly queer with all of the characters, which is just really refreshing to see. Again, it's great to read books that have queer aspects to them, but also not tragedy. I like a fun-loving romance. But that is all of the recommendations that I've got for you in this video. Let me know of any more down below. I would love to have some more recommendations. But thank you again so much for watching this video. I'll come chat to you in the comments, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.